Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking the Doctor Who Christmas special for 2015, The Husbands of River Song. And I thought this was a fairly entertaining episode. It it had its good points and its bad points, and I think this is one of those episodes that's really kind of endemic of both the pros and cons of Stephen Moffat as a writer, and in some ways the character of River Song in general. Now, some people are just sort of River Song's really kind of a very controversial figure, I think, in fandom. Some people love her to bits. Some people absolutely loathe her. I like the character in general, but she's one of those characters I think that a little bit of her goes a long way. You really have to try to keep her balanced. And as my reviews of Doctor Who over the years have demonstrated, I don't really think Stephen Moffat is the most balanced of writers. He tends to just sort of want to run with his own ideas and ignore anything that's inconvenient to kind of getting from point A to point B. And to put it more bluntly, he's a guy who's sometimes way too up his own ass. Um, Now, this is quite clearly intended as sort of the sending the character of River Song off in a way that will be satisfying to the fans. Now, I suppose that they're probably gonna. We should probably never say never that we'll see the character again. I mean, it's a time travel show, and she is reasonably popular, but you kind of tell that that is what was intended here. Plus, Alex Kingston, she's been doing a lot more work on the U.S. side of the pond. So anyway, getting back into what I said about River Song as a character in general. Now, the way I feel about River Song is in general the sort of I need to stop saying in general so much. How I feel about a character like Madame Vastra, who in some ways is similar to River in the way that she is written. There is a comedian I follow on Twitter by the name of Gladstone, one of the writers for Crack.com, who's a Doctor Who fan. And he made this really great observation about Madame Vastra that I have happily stolen more than once. And that's basically everything that comes out of her mouth is a variation of one of two sentences: I'm a lesbian lizard woman, or I am very clever. For River Song, she has a little bit more depth going on to her. But if you stop and think about it, an astonishing amount of the things that come out of River Song's mouth are I'm very clever, or I'm a charming and lovable rogue. Now, as I said, there is more to River Song than those two characteristics. Um, and I do have to say that Alex Kingston is. I can't think of. She was a phenomenal choice for this character. She really got what they were going for with River, and she delivered with the character every single time. So, whatever flaws River Song has as a character, I don't think we can really lay any of it at Alex Kingston's feet. She did great on this show, and I am always going to be happy to see her in anything. Although I would definitely like to see her pop up on Arrow and The Flash a little bit more. Well, she's only appeared on Arrow, but she. Okay, okay. For example, her relationship with the 11th Doctor was really crazy and kind of fun. Her interactions with the 10th Doctor kind of really left him scratching his head. So naturally, we're going to wonder about how she reacts to dealing with the 12th Doctor. And I really loved hearing her talk about the 11th Doctor, because in a lot of ways, he was her doctor. I mean, that's the doctor that she married. And I love that speech she gave about how a sunset admire you back, and she that bit where she goes, where the maitre d guy backstabs her and says like, this is the woman who loves the doctor, and she goes, well, yes, I've never denied that I've loved the doctor, but he doesn't really love me back. And it was very interesting watching Peter Capaldi sort of deal with River as an NPC, if you would. Sorry, I've been playing a lot of video games the last several days. Um, and it's interesting because he's really wanting her to realize who he is and be all excited and happy, which seems very contradictory to the 12th Doctor's more stoic nature. But I think that, obviously the memories and feelings of the 11th Doctor that he had for River are still going to be in the back of his mind somewhere, albeit probably through a bit of a haze. Um, I was reading something that it was actually a fan that had written it, and they were talking about it, like what would it be like to regenerate? And their kind of take on it was that it would, for the Doctor, every time he regenerates, it would be like waking up from a dream. He would have the memories of the previous Doctors, but they would seem dreamlike. Not that they lacked clarity; it's just that, well, we know how when we have dreams, even ones that we recall very clearly and vividly, the way of we think about them and the way we experience the waking world is very different, and that would be kind of how the Doctor might view his memories from his previous incarnations, which I happen to think is actually an extremely interesting and very succinct way of sort of summing up how someone might feel about that. But anyway, he really does kind of want that connection with River. Probably due in no small fact that it's like, hey, somebody who would be happy to see me, somebody who likes me, admires me. With Clara gone and his memories of her messed with, kind of understandable that the Doctor would be looking for a friendly face. And Peter Capaldi's continued disappointment that River doesn't catch on to her, to who he is, in defiance of the whole "I am very clever" thing. Oddly enough, this episode. Um, and then it comes to the full circle where she does realize who he is. And it's very interesting to see him sort of throwing some of her little things back at her, calling her sweetie and going spoilers, but not really exactly in a happy way, given the circumstances. Very understandable. And the whole thing with the diary. Now, I kind of looked at this like, well, books have only X number of pages, and you don't really have to read into it any more than that. But then again, who knows the Doctor better than River? Probably not very many people. And if you stop and think about it, a diary like that is actually kind of a really crap gift to give someone. It's like, okay, once you've got this diary filled up, you're probably gonna die. So yeah, rather poor thinking on the Doctor's part there. But I really do like the way this episode ended. That and tied back to the whole thing with Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead, with River getting the sonic screwdriver and her death and all this other stuff. It's all tied together very, very nicely. You know, although if you stop and think about it, okay, last episode, big deal with companion death. This episode, big deal with companion death. Not the most upbeat thing for this time of the year, now is it? But I do like how it kind of goes out on that note of, okay, River and the Doctor did get 24 years together. I mean, at this point, if you do the math, the Doctor is at least 2,000 years old. And if you sort of read a little bit into some of his comments, he's probably actually more than 3,000 years old. So, 24. What's 24 years to him? But River, as a normal human, of course, that's most of a good chunk of a lifetime for her. You kind of have to wonder if maybe she didn't somehow regenerate during that time. That would be interesting. And, Melody Pond morphing into River Song and gaining those Time Lord powers, I mean, she actually did die in her third incarnation. Um, I think that kind of covers the main thing there. The whole stuff with like River, oh, I'm married to this guy. Oh, I'm married to this. Oh, I used to be married to two different women. It's it's some of the humor of this episode that didn't really work for me. especially the stuff with the guys getting their heads cut off and eventually sort of deciding, yeah, I'm kind of cool with this. I mean, that just seems sort of dumb to me. The character of Hydroflax. Am I the only one that was watching this guy the whole time and thinking that this was like Stephen Moffat was just sort of making fun of Warhammer 40K? Because, I mean, this guy so reminds me of something out of Warhammer. Now, admittedly, I am not really a huge Warhammer guy. I've played the games a little bit. I have some friends who are massive, massive Warhammer freaks. Most of what I know is just sort of me having picked up bits and bobs from hanging out with them. Especially a good friend of mine who is a rabid Tau player, if you're into that. But yeah, Hydroflux just he seemed like Moffat was sort of making fun of Warhammer, or this was like some sort of a parody of like some ridiculous Munchkin character that some 14-year-old kid would come up with. And speaking of stuff that was a little bit over the top, okay, when they go to the ship that's all full of bad guys, River's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, all the people here who are hanging out and chilling, they're all planet burners, and even the maitre d and all the other people that are staff here have mass murder under their belt." It's like, look, you could have just made it clear that this was a ship that was catering to the unsavory elements of the universe, and that yes, the staff here are also people with unsavory things in this, but oh, this is where genocide goes to kick back and relax. I mean, like, come on, seriously? There's a time when you crank it up, and there's a time when you turn it down. And then there's a time when it's just like, okay, now you're just trying to be extreme for the sake of being extreme. It feels like I'm watching something that embodies like the worst tendencies of comic book authors that I really like Garth Ennis and Mark Millar, who sometimes just don't freaking know when to stop. And I have to say, sometimes Stephen Moffat suffers from the same problem as well, albeit with less grody-ness, shall we say, in terms of where they tend to take these sort of ideas. And believe me, if you've read enough stuff by Garth Ennis and Mark Millar, you know that these are two guys who can really go for the messed up stuff. And yeah. So let me see. Um, oh yeah, I absolutely loved that sign on the TARDIS that said "Carolers will be criticized." That was great. And what was also nice about this episode is that even though it was the Christmas episode, it was really, really light on the Christmas stuff. No more the Doctor riding around in Santa's sleigh for some convoluted BS reason. And I suppose it depends on how much Christmas cheese you can stomach. But for me, that's just a little too much. Like last year. I mean, it wasn't a bad episode, but it just sort of feels like those episodes, like Christmas episodes of cartoons that I would watch as a kid, where like He-Man has to save Christmas or something. It's just. And well, we don't really get anything that kind of gives us any real hints as to what's going to be coming up next season, but say lovey. Anyway, as I said, this is a nice way to send the character of River Song off. I'm kind of glad they didn't try to keep her around to sort of keep her bouncing off the 12th Doctor, because he is literally not the man she married. And if she doesn't have that, then she doesn't really work quite as well as a character. Yeah, she interacted with the 10th Doctor a bit, but River Song is a character who is really there to shine with the 11th Doctor. And, well, all good things must come to an end, including this review. So, I'm going to call it here, guys. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Also, you can follow me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer, all one word. Until next time, take care and have a good one.